Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing well. Today is a nice sunny day, 80 degrees here in Chicago, early summer. I hope the weather is great where you are. Today we are going to look at Lumion Lighting. So I'm continuing my series of real-time rendering engines. Check it out on YouTube. I've looked at Enscape, Twinmotion, and now Lumion. Alright, so here's an image of what we're going to end up with. And before we jump into the tutorial, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Click on subscribe. Click on the little bell to receive all the notifications. Here you can see that series I was talking about and videos about anything on digital design. You can find it here at my YouTube channel. Also, connect with me on Instagram at my first name _ my last name. See what I'm up to with my students. Right now, we are just about ending our summer design visualization course. This is a course that focused on rendering. In this course, we used V-Ray and we used Enscape. Students' work is really coming out great. I can't wait to see the final product next week. All right, let's jump into today's tutorial. Here I have an outline, Lumion Lighting, and we're going to cover a whole bunch of stuff. You can see that here in this list. Alright, well let's jump on into it. Let's go back over to Lumion and let's open up the file that I need. Alright, so here's our starting file. If you haven't looked at my Lumion Basics video, you want to go ahead and look back at that. This is where we made this scene that we're looking at right now. We modeled this little pavilion building and put in all the trees and the people and the flowers. So you want to take a look at Lumion Basics. Right now we're going to look at Lumion Lighting. First thing we need to do is set up our camera. So I want to go into the inside of this pavilion. So I'm just going to roll my mouse in, which is just zooming me in, and that's going to get me a pretty decent camera view for what I'm looking for. Right about there looks pretty good. And I'm going to go over to the photo button. And we're going to make this one the photo. We're going to take a snapshot of that. Alright, that's going to be our camera view. So that's what we're going to be working with. Alright, so the first thing that we want to look at is the sun and the sun angles. So if I go over to weather, I can control that sun and where it is and where it's coming into this little pavilion. So I have control over that. I can change its height, whether it comes less into the space or more into the space. And I can change its brightness. So I'm going to lower that down just a little bit because we're working on interior lighting. I can change the cloudiness. That's something else I can change. Alright, so we're gonna start with lighting. So we're gonna need some assets that we're gonna put in. We're gonna put in some furniture and an actual light fixture. So I'm gonna go back over to Home and I'm gonna click on the furniture icon and I'll double click on it and I'll get my furniture objects and I'm gonna use this Eames classic Eames chair here and I'm just gonna drop that in. Now I want to put that on a furniture layer, so that's really important. So we'll look at see how I can change that to a furniture layer. So I'm going to drop that in and let's escape out of this and let's make our furniture layer. So I have layer 4 here. I can double click to edit it and I'm going to make this, I'm going to call this furniture, and later we'll also have a lighting layer. Okay, so that's my furniture. So that lounge chair is selected. You see this in the upper right. It says that the current layer is Rhino model. We're going to move that to layer furniture. Okay, so that's on the correct layer. And while we're here, we're going to rotate this around. Right about there looks pretty good. I'm going to move it out of the way a little bit. Alright, I don't want it in my sun. So right about here looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and get the Eames Ottoman. Drop that in there as well. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Alright, so we have our furniture. We're going to light this with a spotlight. So I'm going to actually bring in an object from the asset editor. I'm going to go to lights. Actually, I'm going to go to furniture. And I'm going to go to lighting. And I'm going to go to this track lighting, these rail lamps. And I'm going to pick this one right here. And I'm going to move my cursor across my ceiling so it finds my ceiling. And I'll drop it in there. And we'll look at moving this and rotating this. So I'm going to move it over here. And I'm going to rotate it around. Now I have some rotate options here. So I can rotate it toward my furniture. And I'm also going to rotate it down so that it faces downward. Okay, so that gives me kind of a realistic look with a light and some objects. So we're going to go ahead and make our layer lights. I'm going to actually put that object on the layer lights too. So I'll call this lights. Make that current. Put this on the layer lights. And now we're going to actually make a light object. So we're going to go to lights. And for this one, I'm going to choose a spotlight type. You see I have a whole bunch of different spotlight types. I like lamp 10. So I'm going to bring out lamp 10. Bring that into my scene. Click on the little cursor icon and I'm going to move that over. And I'm going to move it down a little bit. Okay, so it's a really wide light. The cone angle is really wide on it. So the first thing I'm going to do in the upper right is I'm going to bring the cone angle down. And I'm going to bring the brightness up. I'm going to bring the brightness all the way up on this. Okay. So now you can start to see that cone. It was out really wide and you couldn't see it, but I'm going to bring it in. Okay. So I'm going to position this near the light that I have in the ceiling. So it looks like it's coming right from that light. So somewhere about there. When we do our volumetric light effect, that's going to be really important. So now I want to aim it toward the furniture. So if I go to rotate at the bottom, one of these is going to rotate. That's just rotating in plan and the XY. This one, that's the one I'm looking for. You see I can shine it on the wall and on the floor and right on my furniture objects. And I'm going to bring that cone angle down a little bit more, just for dramatic effect. Alright, so pretty easy to put a spotlight in, and you see all the rotation we can do to it, change the cone angle, change the brightness. I didn't change the color of it. I'm going to make some recessed can lights and change the colors of those. So while we're here, I'm going to save this because this is looking really good. Alright, let's go back to build mode. Alright, so we're going to go back over to Rhino and we're going to look at our outline. So we looked at, this is Lumion 2023. We haven't looked at, well, we did look at cameras. We zoomed in, we saved our cameras. We looked at the sun angle. We looked a little bit at the exposure value of where I can change the sun brightness, and here I see the sun brightness here. We looked at adding assets and furniture. We looked at the spotlight. We haven't looked at the point lights. So I want to look at point lights. So in Rhino, I am going to go to all 4 viewports and I'm going to go to my top view. I'm going to make a layer called recessed can. So I'm going to actually model some lights, some light fixtures. I'm going to put some holes in the ceiling and model some light fixtures. So with my grid snap on, I'm going to go ahead and type in circle, and I'm going to plant a circle right in the middle here of those 3 heavy outlines. I'm going to try to get that right in the middle. So I'm going to use that grid line right there, and I'm going to make the radius 3 inches. Alright, and I'm going to select that circle, and that circle by default is on the floor. So I need to move that circle up to the bottom of the ceiling. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to type in move from the circle, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to make sure that's going straight up, press my tab key, and click to the bottom of that ceiling. Alright, I have that there. I'm going to extrude that. I'm going to extrude it up 3 inches. I did that in the front viewport there. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to copy it a couple times. I'm going to copy it up 5 feet and down 5 feet. I'm just using my grid snap to do that. Okay, so there I have those 3 recessed cans. And I'm going to Boolean difference them out of the ceiling. So I'm going to select my ceiling, type in Boolean difference, select all those circles that got extruded, and now I'm going to have holes in that ceiling. You can see that in the eye level view that I have holes back there in the ceiling. Alright, I'm going to give these a little bit of a definition, meaning some trim. So I'm going to take that curve and I'm going to offset it 1 inch out. I'm going to select that curve and the inside curve, and I'm going to go over here to my front view and I'm going to extrude curve down. Extrude curve down. How does 1 inch look? That looks pretty good. So there's my 1 inch trim. So I'm going to select that object and I'm going to copy it to the other locations using my grid snap, which is already there for me. I can pop it there, pop it there. Alright, so we got those placed in, and let's take a look at that. So you see that right there. That'll be showing up on the interior view under my recessed can layer. Alright, so I'm live syncing this with Lumion. Hopefully that's going to work out great for me. So I'm going to save this file. I'm going to go to Lumion. I'm going to start my live sync, and I'll go over to Lumion, and there we have it. We have those objects placed in there. So that looks pretty good. It updated to my camera view that I had in Rhino. We're going to go back to our photos and we're going to set it to this camera view here. Alright, we'll keep that camera view. Okay, I'll go back to build mode. So I'm done working in Rhino for a bit. So I'm going to stop my live sync. So I'm going to go to Lumion, stop live sync. Go back over to Lumion, and let's put some omni lights in, or what do we call point lights. Point lights and omni lights shine in all directions. So I'm going to go over to my lights, double click on that. I'm going to go to the second category, omni lights, and I'm going to choose the second one, which is omni light. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place that. I'm going to place that in the far left one there. Go ahead and place that. And then I'm going to select it. And I'm going to drag it down a little bit. Okay? And just a little bit. And I'm going to turn the brightness way up on it. Okay, so you see that. I'm not going to go all the way up, but you see that lighting there. It's a point light or a sphere light shining in all directions. So I'm going to get that closer to the object, and I'm going to take the brightness down a little bit, and I'm going to change its color. I'm going to make it a warmer color. Okay, I can't quite see it because it's behind the window, but there it is. I can see it in the viewport. That's looking really good. Now there are some other options here. There's a light source option where you can turn it on and actually see a globe of light. I don't want to see that globe of light. I have my light fixture, my recessed can there. I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to use my Alt key and I'm going to drag it over, and that's going to make a copy of it. So I can do that, and I can do it again. Okay. Now if I want to select all three of them and make a change, a global change, I do have to select all three of them. So I'm going to click on the selection. I'm going to hold the control key down, and I'm going to make drag a selection through all three of those. And at the bottom of my screen, you'll see that I have lights on, the light category. So that allows me to select only the lights when I click and drag. So let's see if this works. Let's take the brightness down. Yeah, see now all three of those are working together, and I'll put the brightness back up. Alright, awesome. So that's your omni light or your point light. Remember, I'm working on the lights layer, so that's really important. So let's go ahead and make a linear light. So we'll double click on the lights and I'll go over to area lights. Now a linear light is just an area light with no width. So something to think about. These two are really the same, area light and line light. But let's go ahead and make a line light. And I'm going to drag that on near the ceiling. And I'm going to click on my selection tool. And I'm going to go ahead and move that toward the wall. And I'm going to move it down a little bit. Okay, so as usual, we're not seeing anything by default. So we have to make some changes. Let's go ahead and make the width, we're going to make the width longer, and I'm going to raise the brightness on it all the way up. Okay, so I'm starting to see something. I'm going to pull it away from the wall. There we go. I just need to have it the right distance from that wall. I'm going to make the width longer so it goes to the edge of the wall, and I got that brightness all the way up. Let's see, do I need to move it down? Nope, you see it working. So it's shining down from the light by default. Move it off the wall a little bit. Alright, there we go. So there's a nice line light. So now I want to make an area light. Let's say I have a soffit situation. I want to light the entire area of a soffit. I can do that. Let's save this. Save often in Lumion. Definitely save often. It's pretty intensive on the computer. Alright, let's head on over to Rhino, and I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this new layer Soffit, make it current, and I'm going to draw a box. So I'm going to do this in my top view using the grid snap. So I'm going to type in box, and I'm just going to make it 3 feet away there. So 3 feet, because I have 3 grid lines there. I'm going to snap it. And I'm going to make it 4 inches tall. So that's going to put it, right now it's on the ground level. So I'm going to take it and raise it up some. That's pretty good right there. You see that on the far right. I'm going to start my Lumion Live Sync. Go over to Lumion. That soffit is there. I'm going to lower that soffit down just a little bit. Another grid line. Go back over. Alright, so that's looking good. So I'm going to stop my live sync. Go back over to Lumion. We're going to put an area light above that soffit. So I'm going to orbit my view a little bit. So we'll go ahead and move down. Don't need to move down that much. And we're going to put the area light right on top of this. So we're going to go to lights. Double click on lights. We're going to choose area light. I'm going to find that. It finds that surface. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop it on that surface. And I can see by default it's pointing down. Let's see, did that actually drop in there? Let's click on the select tool. There it is. So I'm going to move it up a little bit. And I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Not using that slider. Here we go. It snaps really nicely, that rotation. And let's change the brightness of it. There we go. We see something bright on the ceiling. Let's change the color. Let's go with a different type of light. Maybe a colored light. See how that looks. Kind of reflects the walls a little bit. And we're going to make the width. The width looks pretty good. The length, so that's the length in that direction. We're good in that direction. So that's actually, looking at this as the width. The length of it will change to go all the way out. And we want to see what this looks like in our camera view. So let's go to our camera view. Alright, so I'm getting a little bit of blue light there. That blue light can definitely be stronger. So let's go back to build mode. And we're going to select that light if we can. It's just a little bit up there. So I'm just going to move up a little bit and get that light. There it is. Okay, I'm going to go back down, get something similar to my camera eye level view there so I can set that light up correctly. So it looks like the width wants to be, in this case it's the length, wants to be greater. So now you see it sticking out from that soffit, and I'm going to turn the brightness up on it. I'm also going to change its length, which in this case is the width, so it goes all the way to the outside. Well, that's a really nice looking light there, a nice blue light that's coming in. Alright, let's go to our camera view. Let's go to our build mode. Alright, good place to save, and we'll go check on our outline and see what's next. So go ahead and save that. Okay, I'm just checking, make sure I stopped live sync. I did. Alright, let's check our outline. So we looked at spotlight, we looked at point lights, we looked at lights changing the intensity and the color. I have the H key here is just a hotkey to raise the light up and down, which in my world is the Z direction, but it's the Y direction in Lumion's world. And F8 will preview the shadows on and off in your viewport. F8 will show you that. So we looked at lights changing the intensity and color. We looked at rectangular light, line light. Now we're going to start to add some effects. We're going to really make this look like a nice rendering like I showed at the beginning of the video. So I'm going to move up here. We have all these things that we have to do here, starting with the shadow effect. So let's go back over to Lumion. Let's go to build mode. And let's go to our photo viewer. And let's add our first effect. So you see FX in the top left. So I'm going to click on FX and I'm going to add shadow. And the one thing that I want from shadow is I really want what in my world I call ambient occlusion, where you get these nice shadow lines where the wall meets the ceiling, the wall meets the floor. You get these really nice shadows. So that's happening with something called an omni shadow. You see if I increase that, it gets really dark. If I click inside here to preview it, we can see that. So that's pretty dark, a little bit too much omni shadow. So I'm going to take that omni shadow down a little bit, even just a little bit more. I'm just clicking in the window to preview it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to stick with that. Alright, what's our next? Our next effect is hyperlight. Okay, hyperlight, it's kind of like ambient occlusion too. It bounces the light around in terms of global illumination, and you get more light in certain areas, so it makes it a little bit stronger. So in an exterior rendering, some areas that are kind of dark will now get lit up from, say, underneath. We don't really have much of that happening in this image, but we're going to add it and see what happens. So let's go to our effects. And let's add our hyperlight. Okay, and I'm going to turn that hyperlight up a bit, preview that, and let's go back over to our effects. Let's see, I'm going to undo the hyperlight, double click, and it gets a little darker like in this area without it. And I'm going to add it back in, double click. Alright, not really as much happening in this particular scene with the hyperlight as with some exterior scenes. We're going to keep that in there. It's something for you to play around with and explore with in the future. So we have hyperlight. Our next effect we're going to look at is volumetric light. So I want some volumetric light. I can do that for the sunlight and I can do that for my spotlight. It's not going to work on my omni lights. So keep that in mind. It doesn't work on omni lights. So I'm under lighting and I have volumetric light. And it has a little select lights option. And I can click this light here and there you see that big volume that shows up. And we're going to take down the density of that. We're going to take down the intensity of that. And fall off is how close or far away from the light source. So if I make the density really high and I lower the fall off, it'll start to pull in. It should. Yeah, there, on that direction. So it pulls in toward the light, and this is away from the light. So let's take our density down on that. Alright, I don't want to overdo it with the volumetric light. There's not a lot of fog in the scene, but that looks pretty good. So that's our volumetric light. So now I can do that with the sun as well. I can go to Add Effect and I can click on Volumetric Sunlight. And I'm going to change its range. So the range is, I'm looking at the outside there. When the outside gets kind of foggy, that's where I want it. That's making it volumetric. And then I have a brightness control over that as well, where I can make that really bright. I'm going to keep that about in the middle. So that's looking really good there. Alright, so volumetric light. Now we're going to look at just using a style. So we're going to add a style which is going to overlay a bunch of effects on this. So I'm going to go to custom style and I'm going to go to interior. This is interior RT for interior ray trace. My computer's graphics card is not going to display ray trace in real time. It will only display it when I output the rendering. Something that's on, it looks a little funny to you right now because near clip plane is one of those. So I'm going to disable that effect. And what you'll notice is I have 2 pages of effects now. And on the second page is the real skies. So I'm going to work a little bit with the real skies because you see I lost my shadows that were coming in from the outside and it kind of messed up my shadows on the furniture. So I'm going to go to real skies and I'm going to change the real sky. I don't have many options by default, but I want one where it's high in the sky and less cloudy. So I'm going to pick this one, Cloudy 4. And the heading of it is already pretty much in the angle that I want it. So here's the heading, which will change that all around. So we can kind of see that. And I just want it coming in toward the back like I had it. So that's looking pretty good. Then there's brightness. It's just the overall brightness of the sky. That's all that's changing. Alright, so let's go back to our effects. Okay, let's go to our page 1. Alright, what else do we want to add to this? Alright, so we've looked at our style ray trace, we've looked at real skies effect. Now we're going to look at self-illumination. So let's go back over to Lumion and let's save this file. I like the way it's looking right there. And let's go in and add a self-illuminated object. So I need an object, so I have to make that object in Rhino. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. I'm going to call it self-illumination. So this is when you want an object that can act as a light source. Now, I'm finding that it's only really working when it's pretty dark in the scene, which is unfortunate. In other rendering engines, I've been able to get self-illumination to work when it's a fairly bright scene, but we'll keep exploring that. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me a way to get it to really show up during the daytime. So I'm going to turn my grid snap off. I just typed in the command box. So I'm going to go ahead and make a box here. And I'm going to raise that box up. Okay, so now it's sitting where it should. I'm going to isolate that for a moment. And I'm going to soften its edges. I'm going to type in fillet edge. And I'm going to click next radius. I'm going to type in 6, enter. And I'm going to select all the radii there. Enter a couple times and I get a nice soft box there. Alright, that's my self-illuminated box. I'm going to type in show. I think in the preview I didn't have the nice soft edges. I only had the hard edges. So this will look a little bit better than the preview that we did. Alright, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to start my live sync. Go over to Lumion. That's showing up there. Go back to the photo. Alright, I can move it a little bit closer. Let's see what it looks like in the photo. I'm going to move it a little bit closer. I don't know why it was looking like that. We'll find out in a minute. Move it a little bit closer. Okay. Alright, that looks pretty good. That's going to look good through my camera. Let's stop the live sync. Just going to save this file. Get our outline back up. So we're almost there. Emissive material, which is self-illumination, and we're going to talk about render output. Alright. So let's go to my camera view here. Alright, there's my camera view, and there's my giant box that I'm going to self-illuminate. So I'm going to do this through material mode. So I'm going to go to build mode. I'm going to go to materials. I'm going to highlight that. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, I know, because I didn't put materials on my box or on my soffit. So it's seeing those as one object right now. So back over in Rhino, I got to make sure that I put materials on it so it doesn't see it as one object. So I have my soffit. I'm going to click on the little circle there. I'm going to call this soffit. Not siffit, but soffit. And I'm going to click on my self-illumination. I'm going to call this one self-illumination. Self-illumination. And also my recessed can, I have that layer there too. I'm going to click on that and call this one recessed can. Okay, and I'm going to sync that. And let's go over and see what it looks like. It'll take a second probably to update that. Let's see if it updates now. It hasn't updated for me. Material. Okay, now it's doing something. It's updated somehow. Not sure what, if it's really tied to it at the moment. Let's see. I'm going to go back to home. I'm going to go to materials. And there we go. Now it's working. Just I went out of materials to home and went back and it adjusted itself. So a little glitchy there with the live sync. So I'm going to click on self-illumination. And I'm going to go to settings. And down at the bottom there's something called emissive strength. And I'm going to, you see that brightening up there. And now if I go back, if I just click on the check mark and I go back to weather, and I take the sun brightness all the way down, it might take a second. There we go. Now we're like getting this self-illuminated object. And let's change its color. So let's go back to materials. Let's click on that and let's change its color. I'm going to make it like a magenta glowing object. Something like that. That looks pretty cool right there. Alright, so that's unfortunately not going to work for me during the day. Maybe someone could leave me some comments, ways that I can make that emissive strength a little bit stronger during the day. I can do that for the night scene. It works out really good. Alright, let's go back to our photo. Alright, so now we just have a big purple object sitting in the scene there. Alright, so now we got to export this out. Let's get our preview going here. I think I want my sun to be just a little bit brighter. So I'm going to go over to page 2 and go to real skies, and I'm going to make this is going to brighten the background. Let's try the overall brightness. I want that outside to look brighter. Let's go to our sun. See if we can get the intensity of that to be brighter. Oh, we have this sun nicely down here. I don't think it's going to work with my effect because we're using the real sky, so I don't think it's going to work. I'm going to turn the sun brightness up. Okay, go back to my camera. I think it's just gonna change a little bit back. Yeah, not as bright as I want it. Alright, maybe the volumetric sunlight, I can change that brightness. Get that to update. Just looking for that outside to be just a little bit brighter. Alright, so let's go back. We have our nice effects stack. Now remember, this is ray trace, so if I click on render photo, it's going to actually ray trace it. So I'm going to do 1920 by 1080. I'm going to save that. It's taking a second. It's thinking about it. Alright, so now it's starting its output. It looks pretty nice, the image there. Now you see at the bottom, the samples are 512. So there's some settings inside of Lumion where you could lower that sample count to be much, much lower. You know, you could have it at a count of 12, or you could have it at 512, or you could have it at, 1280. So we're going to let this render, and we're going to come back to it. I'll end up speeding up the video, and we'll see the final result. Alright, so Lumion let me know that that's rendering is done. Rendering is complete. So that's the new ray tracing mode that's available now only in 2023. And it's a really nice feature if you have some time to wait for the rendering. I'm a big fan of real-time rendering engines, which Lumion is, and it can give me what they call rasterized rendering in no time and just seconds. But if you want a ray traced image at higher quality, take advantage of 2023's new ray tracing, you can get an image like this in 16 minutes and 21 seconds, which isn't bad. Go get a cup of coffee or have lunch, something like that. I'm going to take a look at that in its folder and just go ahead and open that up. And there it is. Pretty nice looking image for the little amount that we have in it. Another thing you can check out is depth of field, where you can focus on a certain area of the rendering and let the others fade. In my Lumion Basics, I talk about depth of field. Alright, my head is going to pop up in the top left. Click on my head if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. I'll put some videos in the upper right and the lower right to other Lumion videos. If you like this video, give me a like below and let me know what you think in the comments. Alright everyone, have an awesome day, and I will see you on the next one.